Now, I realize some of you will immediately say that this is easily the most ridiculous idea I've had for a video yet, implying that in any way, shape, or form that Deadpool, and I mean the one from the two movies, not the one from the comic books, would somehow be a greater hero than Luke Skywalker. And yes, such an assumption does seem kinda ridiculous on the surface, but when you look a little deeper, you begin to see how similar these two characters really are, or at least how similar they are in their two most recent movies, those being The Last Jedi and Deadpool 2. And look, my intent here is not to belittle the legacy of Luke Skywalker by comparing him to Deadpool of all characters, nor was saying that meant as a slight against Deadpool. Those who have followed my channel for any length of time know the respect and love I have for both the character of Luke Skywalker and the actor Mark Hamill who plays him. I've also expressed my disappointment and disagreement many times about how Luke was handled in The Last Jedi in my videos, which has led to many debates in the comment sections of those videos with people who love how Luke was handled in that movie. So what I'm going to do here is to try to take no sides per se, and using Deadpool of all characters, explain why there is so many fans disappointed by the way Luke was handled in The Last Jedi. First of all though, be warned that there will be spoilers for Deadpool 2 in this video, so if you haven't seen it yet and don't want the movie ruined, now would be a good time to click away and check this video out at a later time if you want. Second of all, I understand there are certainly differences in the scenarios these two characters find themselves in, but for the sake of making an argument, not to mention a fun video, and maybe even a point or two along the way, I hope you can accept them and just go with it. All that being said, let's jump in. Now, what I find so interesting about Luke Skywalker and Deadpool, again in relation to the two most recent movies to feature them, is that they both find themselves experiencing a great loss as a result of a devotion to a way of life. In Luke's case being a Jedi, and his belief that he could save his nephew through training, eventually resulted in the death of most of his students, and those who weren't killed have fallen to the dark side along with his nephew. While in the case of Deadpool, his crime-fighting ways lead directly to the death of his girlfriend, when one of the bad guys he failed to kill tracked him down and shot her. And again, though not entirely the same, both these characters had similar reactions when initially experiencing or learning about this impending loss. When Luke looked into Ben's mind and saw a dark future there, and we can only assume what he saw, but I'd have to imagine among the visions were Ben murdering the other students, and maybe even he saw him killing Han, Luke then had the initial reaction to kill his nephew to prevent this from coming to pass. And this, of course, is not something everyone can accept out of Luke, that embracing his anger and striking out would be his initial reaction, especially since this seems to be a lesson he learned at the end of Return of the Jedi. Yet here he is, 30 years and a great deal of time to reflect and to train as a Jedi later, again almost giving in to his anger. But whereas the realization that he was giving into his anger and stopping himself is what led him to his greatest victory against Vader and Palpatine then, almost giving into it now before realizing what he was about to do now leads to his greatest defeat. And instead of learning anything from making the same wrong choice as he did then, he feels only shame and regret this time. Some might like the cyclical nature of these two scenes or moments, and George Lucas did seem to be a fan of such storytelling. But many find this sad that Luke makes the same mistake twice and learns everything from it the first time and nothing from it the second. Nevertheless, killing Ben to prevent the future was Luke's initial reaction, and after realizing what he was about to do, he let the shame and guilt overtake him, and he didn't think he could face those he had failed, among them Han, Leia, and even Ben, and decided to exile himself to an island to die, instead of looking for a way to right the wrongs or even attempt to prevent the future he saw, which again is not something everyone can accept out of Luke, that he would ever give up, especially after having gotten a glimpse of such a dark future, a future that in one moment he is willing to kill his nephew to prevent, and in the next will do nothing to stop. Deadpool, on the other hand, upon losing his girlfriend, also experiences anger and the need for vengeance or to act, but unlike Luke, he carries through with it and kills the one who shot her, mainly because, well, he wanted to kill him anyway, for previous crimes he'd actually committed. And there is the big difference, of course. Luke stays his hand not just because Ben is his nephew, but because he hasn't done anything yet. Rey even says later in the movie Luke's biggest mistake was thinking Ben's choice was made when it wasn't. But that leaves us to wonder how Luke could be foolish enough to think this in the first place, that the future he saw was set in stone, especially considering he could have, in theory, ended it with one swing of a lightsaber. For many, this just reiterates the fact that Luke is making mistakes out of character, that he is failing at things he has learned in previous movies. Like how Yoda tells him in The Empire Strikes Back that the future is always in motion. Not to mention, if Luke went looking into Ben's mind, he must have expected or feared that he would see some horrible things there in his future, or why look in the first place? Luke also should have been prepared to see damn near anything. Again, this is why he looked. Instead, he's still freaked out by what he saw, which means whatever it was must have been pretty horrendous. Which again only makes us question why Luke chose to do nothing about it when he might be the only person capable of stopping the newly created Kylo Ren. Anyway, after these two great losses, Deadpool losing his girlfriend and Luke losing his students, they both have similar initial reactions, and they give up entirely, overcome by their own guilt. Luke exiles himself to an island where he intends to just die, while Deadpool unsuccessfully tries to kill himself by blowing himself up. But this is where these two characters go down drastically different paths. Whereas Luke cuts himself off from the Force in an effort to actively ignore the troubles of the galaxy that he might otherwise sense or feel, Deadpool has a strange vision of his dead girlfriend that is either his subconscious mind trying to give him new purpose, or is actually his dead wife, I suppose. Either way, Deadpool is soon hell-bent on doing right by the one he has failed, while for years Luke chooses to rot away on an island and ignore the fact that he could still do right by his family and friends, and maybe even save his nephew. Deadpool then joins the X-Men and, on his first mission, fails, but only because he holds true to his beliefs and decides to kill some bad guys who are harming mutant children. For this, he is sent to a prison with one of the kids he was trying to help. At which point, he again gives up, and thanks to a collar that represses mutant powers, he is now capable of dying, and for a time, gladly accepts this. It is here that Cable comes into the picture, and oddly enough, he has a choice similar to the one Luke Skywalker had. Cable knows the future, and knows if he kills one kid, he can prevent his family from being killed. Just like Luke had the option to kill Ben to prevent the future he saw in Ben's mind. The difference here is, of course, that Cable has actually lived through these events instead of just seeing them in a vision. Hence, he not only makes the same mistake Luke does, believing the future is set in stone, but has more of a reason to, considering, again, he's lived through it and knows without question it will happen if action isn't taken. The funny part here is that out of these three characters, Deadpool, Cable, and Luke, only Deadpool has the right line of thinking and realizes the future is not set, not if the one responsible for it can be reached and saved. And even though Deadpool truly has no reason to be vested in the boy or the future Cable is from, unlike Luke who has every reason to care about his family, friends, and their future, Deadpool jumps at the chance to act as soon as a new purpose or goal, or chance to be a hero and save people, is presented to him. And the thing is, not being vested would only make it easier for Deadpool to turn his back and do nothing and simply allow Cable to kill the kid. But that's not Deadpool, that's not his character. Instead, he always tries to do what is right, but goes about it in his own way. Luke, on the other hand, though clearly established in the original trilogy to have tremendous perseverance and care for his family and friends, simply cannot and will not get over his own failings, his own guilt and shame, and decide to act. Despite the fact that his friends were once, according to Emperor Palpatine, his greatest weakness, even though we all know they were actually his greatest strength. In other words, the foundation of the character has been changed or sacrificed in order to fit the story, which for some is a welcome, refreshing change for the character of Luke, while for others it just comes off as a betrayal of the character they've been waiting to see on screen and in action again for 35 years. The sad part for Luke, though, is whereas Deadpool jumped at the chance to be a hero again, Luke couldn't be convinced even after Rey shows up on an island nobody should be able to find him at. Clearly led to him by the Force because she has his old lightsaber somehow, a saber that should have been lost forever. Nor is Luke motivated to act when learning that Ben has begun to carry out this vision he saw in his mind, that he has even murdered Han Solo, Luke's best friend. And instead of training Rey to be a Jedi to stop Kylo Ren, assuming Luke won't let go of this belief that he himself is not meant to do this, and this is a fair point considering neither Obi-Wan nor Yoda believed it was their place to stop Vader. All Luke tries to do is convince Rey why the Jedi should end. And yes, an argument could be made here that Luke simply wanted to spare Rey the pain he had gone through in his life. He didn't want her to devote herself to an ideal that might fail her, like he feels it failed him. I get that. I get what Rian Johnson was going for with Luke in The Last Jedi. It's not a matter of understanding the story for me and many others who didn't like it. It's a matter of accepting that this is what Luke would become. It's hard to swallow that Luke would give up so utterly on everything, that he would be so different from the last time we saw him at the end of Return of the Jedi. And sure, Luke was going to change after 30 years, no doubt, but we don't all change for the worse after 30 years, even though all of us go through our own set of personal tragedies in this life. I'm 40 years old, and by no means has my life been smooth sailing, but in spite of the hard times, no, because of the hard times, I'm a much better person today than I was, say, 20 years ago, and I know without question there are many of you, if not most of you, who can look back at your life, no matter how long or short it may be at this point, and say the same thing, that you have become a better, stronger person because of the hard times in your life. And for me personally, I didn't need or want to see Luke Skywalker brought down a peg or two. As I've said before in other videos, I don't think most people go to a movie like Star Wars to be reminded of what we are, but to rather be shown what we could be, to be given an ideal to strive for. Luke giving in to his failures and letting them defeat him does not make him relatable to me, because a lot of people never ever give up. And it's thanks to those people that we have heroes in the first place. I mean, just imagine what this world would be like if everyone broke like Luke Skywalker instead of finding a way to persevere like Deadpool. And no, I really can't believe I just said that. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to let me know what you think, and please keep in mind this was meant as a bit of a fun video. There are many, many reasons why Deadpool is not a greater hero than Luke Skywalker, and I'm sure plenty of you will point them out in the comments below. Anyway, have your say about whatever you would like in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.